Hello, viewers. You're welcome to this week's episode on Health Watch on Advent Cable Network, Nigeria, ACNN. I am Angela Emeka Ibibu. Women are celebrated globally because of their uniqueness. Just recently, on the 8th of March, it was International Women's Day. Following this date, we have had Mothering Sunday to celebrate mothers in the Anglican Communion and some other Orthodox denominations. Within the Christian faith, women are celebrated about 3 times or more a year by different denominations. Even different countries have different days for celebrating women. I believe this is because women are special, considering the vital role they play in the society. They are the life of every family. Good women are not just born, they are built, shaped, and molded during their childhood and adolescent years by their experiences, influences, their communities, and most importantly, the mentors in their lives. The process of transiting from a girl child to a teenager, then adulthood, then motherhood is a long process that requires a lot of intelligent navigation and, of course, help. So on the program today, I have 2 guests that will talk us through their process on how they made it thus far. And what will they be doing differently in raising their daughters and even their sons if they need be? My first guest is Mercy John Oyilo. Mercy John Oyilo, she's a content writer. Mercy, you're welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Your beautiful smile.
Thank you.
Good to have you.
Thank you
for
much.
coming. And she's joined by a second guest who is, well, I think a popular face on this station, Damilola Ilubeju. She's a communication specialist. Dami, you're welcome.
Thank you so much
You're
for having
smiling
me.
again. Dami, an excellent smile.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, girls. Thank you,
I'm glad
ladies,
to
for
be here.
coming. Yeah, good to have you around. Okay, so a couple of, I think, weeks now, I had discussion with the guys. I had 2 guys, and I think you know them, both of them. And we talked about the experience they had growing up as young men into fatherhood. Quite an interesting fact. They exposed me to a lot of things regards to how men grow and the things. In fact, what I remember is that I didn't know that from childhood they were almost admiring girls, and I'm wondering, really? At 7, you know, you're conscious of, oh, your environment is a pretty girl. I'm ashamed of speaking to her, and I'm like, really? I thought the guys were supposed to be bold, but that's a good takeaway from there. And so today we are focusing on the ladies. But how am I going? Okay, to start this now, as far as you can think, let me start with you, Dan. As far as you can think, what was your childhood experience? Not everybody remembers their childhood, but what was it like for you, as far as you can remember? I don't expect you to remember what you did when you were 5 years old.
I do remember
Oh,
some
do
things I did
you?
from 5 years old.
Oh, that's okay. Then you must have had exciting childhood.
Well, I had an exciting childhood. I mean, childhood was good. My parents were very loving. I had family around me, extended family around me. And then I grew up with although I grew up in an environment where it was mostly, it was like more of a triangle life. Church, school, home, church, school, home.
Okay.
But it was really fun and exciting, And at the time when I was a child, we had neighbors that we interacted well with. Now everybody minds the business, but back then you interacted with your neighbors as though they were family. So childhood was quite interesting. So
Yeah.
and I think I remember from as early as 5 years old, because the experiences I've had were memorable.
So you traveled a lot. You had lots of birthdays, and
It was not so much. It was not so much about traveling. It was more about how instrumental those experiences were in defining who I was as a person, and just finding my way in the world. So those were. I think that's the reason mostly why I remember, that part of my childhood very clearly.
Let me come to you, Mercy. Your childhood, was it interesting as well, or here and there?
Okay, so growing up, it was more tough than fun. I lost my dad. I was clocking 6. I lost my dad, yes. And I think it's been 24 years without him.
Wow.
And growing up, we're just 2, my brother and I. definitely you have to support your mom. You have to be there for her, running errands. I can remember that at 6, I could cook beans.
6?
Yes, I could pound. Yeah. So there were a lot of things that my mom basically had to instill in me, and that shaping that toughness that I had growing up. And a lot of people who meet me and they say, Mercy, like, you're tough and all that. I'm like, sorry. It's not like I want to be tough or I want to be. It's that it didn't start today. It came from somewhere. There. So I had to realize that the past and the present are two different times. And whatever experience I had while growing up, if need be, if there needed to be a change to make it better for me now, then that change had to come from me.
From you.
Yes, to make my present experience better, beautiful, sweet. Because that toughness affected my relationships, it affected my friendships, a whole lot. But one thing I can never forget is growing up, even in that tough experience, my mom was very loving.
Very lovely too. Did you have any somebody you looked as father figure?
Yes, I did.
Yeah, like
yes,
uncles, moms,
yes.
and
not
how
really
did they
uncles, yes,
influence,
but I had a father figure, and it was awesome. You know, the little I have to go and report, say what mommy did. This is it. All the restrictions I had, quickly I'll just go and report, and I'm like, because to me I was trying to be defensive, like I was trying to defend my interest, myself, my fun, my happiness, my joy. And I feel like you're always trying to correct me and trying to, like, you're trying to rip something out of me, like you're trying to cut something short. And you know, at some point it became a very big battle. My mom, then the person I looked up to, like each time I tried to correct her, you try to tell her that it's okay. Who should you listen to?
Okay, so you're caught between the person, father figure.
Yes.
Did you think you would have turned out differently if your dad was around? Or you didn't know what it would look like, obviously.
I keep saying is that I have a glimpse of what my life would have been if he was around. Perfect, beautiful. You know, I remember one time when I was telling my friend back then in boarding school, if I see her, like anytime she's sad or down, like whenever I see her facial expression, I'm like, what's wrong with you? She's like, she miss her mom. I'm like, as you see me like this, I've forgotten about that. The only thing is that maybe if he was alive, I would have asked for more. And now that I can't have more, let it be like that. And I'm happy that I have this. I'm contented. So be like that.
Oh wow.
If she was alive, you would have had more, you'd have had better. Now that you have this, it's still okay. So I feel the absence of one's parents in the life of a growing teenage girl, I feel like it can really affect that lady a lot.
Let me come back to you. So how influential was your dad to you? I think I have more of my influence from my father than my mom. Maybe I tried to convince myself. I don't know. But how much influence did your dad have in your life in becoming the young lady that you are today?
I think I would just start by mentioning one particular statement that people associate me with. A lot of people tell me I'm very principled. And I also find that it's a similar trait that they used to refer to my dad. Okay. So I'll feel that in some ways, in more ways than not, I feel that we're very similar, my dad and I. And I feel like we had a very good relationship growing up, more so than my mom. And I feel that's shaped, things it shaped me in a way that I can't really explain, really. Because there are certain things I've come to expect from people. There are certain things I come to demand, I feel that if my dad was not in my life, there are certain things that might not have gone the way they did. I've had my own share of my own tough experiences as well. But I feel that having a dad in your life is so instrumental for a young girl, because it kind of teaches a girl what she should tolerate from people. And what she who she is in the world, and regardless of what people say in the world, like the stereotypes, because there are a lot of stereotypes about women, about what women should deserve. A lot of women, they say women belong in the kitchen, women should not have an education. But my dad was someone who, for example, this is just something that happened in university. There was this particular young man I was friends with, and my dad was like, "What's your relationship with this person?" And I was like, "Oh, he's a friend. He helps me with materials." I was trying to kind of defend that friendship so that it doesn't look like it was more than it was.
Yeah.
And then my dad was like, "You don't have to be friends with someone that helps you in this way. Like, the fact that the person helps you with materials does not mean the person has to be your friend." And it just had me thinking, I kind of had this perspective that I should be choosing my friends. My friends should not come to my life as a matter of circumstance. Oh, they help you. Because you find a lot of ladies now, they're in relationships that are toxic, and they're in those relationships because of what they are benefiting from those relationships, what they supposedly owe this person who has helped in the past. Because some people come from unfortunate backgrounds where they're not able to afford a lot of things, and then someone comes into their life and helps them in this area, and then takes advantage of those opportunities. Oh, you're going to pay me back everything you've given me. But my dad saying that to me kind of shaped, my perspective that the fact that someone helps you in this area does not mean they're deserving of your attention, of your time. They should be respectful. They should be deserving of your respect. You shouldn't give your respect, or you shouldn't give things to people just because they've helped you financially, or they've helped you in all these other ways. These are things. And then I feel another way in which I feel like my dad was instrumental in my life was also in, just the role of provider, really. Provider, a covering, of a home. Because a lot of people grow up in environments where, like our sister just mentioned, having to be tough. I didn't feel the need to be tough because I had my dad. My dad was that presence that was like a protector, a strong foundation that people, I wasn't allowed to experience a lot of things when I was growing up, and I was actually very resentful about these things. I wasn't allowed to watch certain movies. I wasn't allowed to go out anyhow.
So that
attend
puts a
some
lot
parties.
of,
There were
boundaries,
strict boundaries I had that I feel that if my dad was not there,
you-
it wouldn't have been.
Those boundaries, how did you establish them in your own life when you were growing up? As in, did you have to go and talk to an uncle? Let's call it back to you, Mercy. Did you have to go and talk to an uncle? Oh, I really don't know what stage I'm at. Or did you go to talk to an uncle to say, oh, see who I am? Or your mom played the both role? Why I'm asking this question, and I didn't expect it to go. This discussion we're having, I didn't expect it to go in this direction, but I like the direction.
It's fine.
It's come. You're not hearing.
It's fine.
All right. So, because you see, some people, some mothers feel, okay, I don't need a husband in my life. I can do everything for my daughter. I think I'm enough for her. Did you think? I don't know. Back to the question I said. How much role did the father figures you look at play in helping you, bring out from being that resentful person? Like she said she didn't need to fight anybody because she already had a father figure in front of her. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So, my mom constantly reminded us that she was our father.
Okay.
And she told us, even till date, she still says, funny enough, she walked me to the altar
Oh wow.
on my wedding day. Yes. It was planned. One of my uncles was going to do that and everything. But when I sat, I told him, I said, Holy Spirit, this woman has labored. Why should someone come and
stand in
enjoy
her place.
or come and stand or take her place? I don't think any of them deserved to take that position. And I don't know how it happened. It was a simple prayer. Holy Spirit, this is what I want. Please do this. Later, when we told her that this was like a prayer point for me, like, Holy Spirit, I want my mom to be the one to walk me. I want, who is giving this lady out in marriage? I want it to be her. That will stand up and take my hand and say, me, I, her mother. And it happened. The joy, the excitement, the strength that that moment brought
Good
to
for
her.
you. Yeah, to
You
her.
know?
Yeah.
I don't know. I didn't know she was going to.
Feel it that way.
She told me, thank you. She constantly reminds me that she's my father and she can take up both roles effortlessly. And she will keep doing that till Jesus tarries.
Yeah.
But most importantly, the place of the people, of those who stood as my fathers, especially in faith, it was evident. Because that particular season where I knew I was lacking the father figure, God made it happen that they just came in.
Okay.
God brought them at that particular point. I think it would have been bad if they were not there.
Wow.
Yes, because
Okay.
sincerely, it was tough. As a teenage girl, people always thought that you are a fine girl. You always have friends that want to deceive you about. After worship, you want to run out, to go and do waka waka and all those things. But because there was someone who constantly, where is Mercy? What is she doing now?
Like a
Up
father
to date,
figure?
yes.
Yeah.
Keep up to date, constantly checking up, constantly praying with us, even when the person was not even around. Most times we have to travel for holiday to the person's house.
Wow.
Yes, it was like that.
Wow.
And the person who took that position constantly, being that father figure to us, currently is Bishop Johnson Onoha.
Johnson
Yes.
Onoha.
Arochukwu Diocese. Yes.
Wow,
He was
that's,
there with us.
That's
Yes.
it's so far away. Yeah.
So far.
Wow.
As a very young priest.
Yes, the wrong
We had
bishop.
others. We had other people. Yes, who were there. In fact, at some point, it was like, we need Mercy and Emmanuel in our house this week. We need Mercy and Emmanuel after
So
school
he took
this
up
holiday.
the responsibility of a father figure.
He said, please, I need Mercy and Emmanuel. And that was it.
Wow.
Yes.
Like I think he was at your wedding. I think
Yes.
he preached at your
Yes.
wedding, if I remember very well.
Yes, he did.
So, because why I'm trying to establish this is that no matter how we look at it, there's a place for the father
Please,
figure.
there is a place. Because whenever I hear ladies saying, I can do that my father, I can. I'm like, it's tough out there, you don't know. It's tough out there. When I said I'm menstruating, for goodness sake, nobody knew. I didn't know what was happening to me.
Yeah.
My mom had prepared me already for boarding school. She did everything.
But did she tell you prior?
She
because
told
you've
me.
taking me forward now to my next question.
She told me
about
but
menstruation,
yes,
that you see it at a particular
she
time.
told me.
Okay.
One of those days when I was speaking with him, he told me these things.
Oh, the father.
Yes, he told me.
Oh, the bishop.
Yes, he said, I want
wow.
to tell you some things. He told
wow.
me. Yes. So be careful. Let nobody touch you
feel about it?
I was very shy.
When he was telling you, how did you feel about it? How did he feel? He was confidently telling you.
Confident.
Yes.
He told me, I want to talk to you.
Oh wow.
He said, and you are a senior sister to everyone in this house. So I need you to pay attention carefully. Know he's soft spoken.
Yes, I know.
So he told me those things, and he told me so that when you go out there, they will not use those small things to want to deceive you.
Did he tell you about men? Did he talk to you about men?
So you can imagine the first time I told him that I'm getting married. I've seen someone like you. I'm sure you've been the one chasing them away.
Oh wow. Wow.
That's because they have seen that, how do I put it? That's as in they've seen the emotions, they've seen the character traits in me, all those things that made them to conclude that I'm sure you're the one that has been chasing men away.
Wow.
So at some point I had to tell myself, this upbringing, this childhood experience, it needs to leave, it needs to go. Something old has to give it for something new to come into your life. And sincerely, that upbringing was more like a godly foundation. If that godly foundation was not there, I think I would have strayed. I would have been lost. Yes.
So you had your mother who was also putting it
constantly,
in there, and you had a bishop who took up the responsibility.
Yes.
When he first you felt he was going to be your father figure, did you resent him? Did you feel?
I didn't.
But you were safe. Were you safe because you knew him before? Were you safe around him because he's a priest, or were you safe around him because you trusted him? What was the reason for your being
I was safe around him because I saw him like my father. My father was a priest. So I was like, okay, this is my daddy.
All right. Okay.
And then, most importantly, what he did was one of the things that I think I still enjoy till date. he didn't take that responsibility alone.
Okay.
It was like two father figures, because at some point, Prince Sonny Ukachuku had to step in at some point
Okay.
to, seal up that foundation that he laid.
Oh,
Financially, they were there for us.
Oh, wow.
There was no day I was there. I went to Madonna University,
Wow.
Okija, Anambra
Wow.
State.
Wow.
So for 4 years, you can imagine what it felt like. I needed pocket money.
You know
There are
who to
times
call.
that I will not call my mom. But once I see once daddy sees my flash or my missed call, he will call me. What is it? They say we should pay for this one. Okay, no problem. So you see that point whereby a lady lacks someone who provides. Trust me, you will have other options quickly.
No matter how much your
No
mother
matter how
provides,
much your
there's
mother
that
provides
father,
for
yes.
you, because you always hear them saying, I'll call my dad, I'll call my father. My father will sort it out. My father. So like me, I don't have father that will sort it out. What will I now do? I'll call my mother who will sort it out. And then when I call her and she say she doesn't have, just give me some days. And she cannot understand that it's urgent. It's urgent. So I just knew that, okay, if I call daddy and daddy Bishop, because that's the name we gave him. Everyone calls him. If we call daddy Bishop and we see that he's not responding sharp, we'll call Uncle Prince. And that was it.
Yeah.
So it was like God just brought them
Them
at that
in
particular
tears.
point, because I keep saying is that I don't know if daddy was alive. I don't know how my life would have been. So I feel like in his own wisdom, in his own understanding, in his own time, God makes things happen. And he knows what he does.
Yes.
My work is not to keep, why did my dad go at this early stage? Why did I do? That wasn't it for me. It was that God wanted to use that season to, for something to actually come out of me, to train me, to build
So which
me.
means God, sometimes I heard somebody say, I'm coming to you next time. Somebody said, oh, I don't know how my dad would have been. But when I turned to God, he was a better father. And I think I preferred the way he actually took care of
Fathered
me.
me.
Fathered me. I had
Yes.
a friend who said that I didn't know my father so much. Maybe he would have been poor and couldn't afford to take me to where I actually went to. But when he left and I took to God, I liked the way he fathered me. So let's come to you now. Just like she brought up something before she went the way she had gone before I go on the break. When you first started seeing your message, I think I didn't even tell you. I think when you first started seeing your message, was it your mom or your dad you went to meet?
Well, I think I eventually told my mom.
Okay.
It wasn't immediately though.
Okay.
I think
It took a while.
yeah, it took a while.
Why do we always take a long time?
I think
We
the
don't tell
reason
our parents.
I think
Is it
some I
because-
think for me,
Mine was so fast.
before I get into why it took a while. I think I needed to lay the fact that sometimes the way a child understands things is very different from how an adult sees it. I can look back now and say, okay, it wasn't actually that bad. But when I was a child, I was someone who internalized information a lot. I didn't see myself as someone who could readily express themselves. So I held a lot of things inside. I bottled up my emotions. I don't know why that was, but maybe I can come up with reasons now, but just in hindsight, really. And so I didn't feel so free to talk to my parents, to open up, to tell them things that were going on with me. Because there was a sense of, I can't really trust these people, I can't really trust
Did you
this.
think they were going to judge you if you said anything, or they will look at it differently?
Actually, I'm not really sure. But,
Okay, you're not really sure.
but the reason why it took time was because, I somewhat had a strained relationship with my mom.
Okay.
I felt like I couldn't really, open up to her.
But she used to be one of those, like our moms,
Well,
that was always flogging you. Like I always say, if any man touches you, now that you see your period,
I don't want
if
to
any man
be.
touches you, you get pregnant.
I don't want to be. My mom never used that line.
Okay,
I don't think
my
it's.
mom-
I don't
my
think it
mom-
would have worked
Yes,
anyway
yes.
because we're very small. But I think the reason why our relationship was strained is because the relationship between us was not so great,
Okay.
and it was because we had, we have different personalities. Sometimes our personalities with our children's don't really match,
Yeah.
and sometimes when there's a lack of understanding between the two parties, there's bound to be. I was always that person that people saw. I was very quiet, and I was also very, very calm.
Okay.
And I didn't readily express myself, so I was always looked at as a dummy, But I was very smart,
Yeah, and you
It's
are very
it's
smart,
just
actually.
that to readily, I needed time and space to be able to express certain emotions, and I was always rushed. Oh, what is it? And then when I don't speak immediately, it's like, and I
Okay,
think
yeah,
in a way that's kind of how our educational system is. Like
They
people
expect
that
you to be like this
people
and
that don't
correct.
people that need more time to like process information are always left behind.
It's true.
You know, and sometimes it's not the person who speaks the most in class that's the smartest, you know. Sometimes it's are those ones that take time to process things, that store the information better, they store it for longer, and they're able to like reprocess because they can actually look at you know, an issue from different
Angles,
perspectives. And so I was that person that, but you know, every single time it's like, oh, so I felt like I was rushed, you know, through life, and you know, in some ways I wasn't really getting along with my mom as much. But the reason why I eventually told her is actually very funny. I told her because I did not have money. I had no pocket money. And so I wasn't receiving pocket money at the time. So I had no money and I needed to buy sanitary products. And I knew I had to tell my parents somehow, you know. And the way my mom responded, you know, before then, you know, she was talking about how, you know, the conversation was had. In my own case, it was more about, don't worry, you hear about it in school. You know, my mom kind of looked for a way, you know, I feel like some parents are actually shy to bring up this
Yeah,
topic.
to talk about it.
Because it's, you know, let's just talk about the elephant in the room. You know, it's a very difficult topic for some people to unpack. I work for an NGO now, or rather, I volunteer for an NGO now that is around period poverty and period dignity and educating people about menstruation. But for a lot of people, you know, it's like a stigma. You know, menstruation is like a stigma. And so it's very difficult for them to talk about it. Because some of them, they have very, you know, tough experiences attached to those things themselves. Sometimes trauma does not allow our parents to connect in a way that we expect. Because sometimes if you've gone through a particular experience where you've had to hide yourself, you've had to, you know, navigate, you know, through difficult topics on your own, it will be very difficult to pass that information to your children if you do not unlearn, you know. So you need to come to a place where you feel like comfortable enough to discuss difficult topics. For me, I felt personally, from my own childhood lens, that this was not a topic my mom was really interested in talking about, because it was very difficult to talk about. It was just more like, if I talk about this now, what if she asks questions about other things? How am I going to, you know?
Right.
Because there's no how you talk about menstruation without talking about sex, eventually. Because for a teenage child who's growing up, you start talking about menstruation, you also have to talk about how that is a different, you know, season in a girl's life, and things that could happen if, you know, that season is not well managed. And so my mom was like, oh, she would ask me questions in a way, you know, in a stylish way, like, oh, have they talked to you about it in school?
Give you the, okay, so she
didn't give me the rundown,
you
you know. She didn't give me, you know, the definition of the parts, where it actually comes from. Those are things I had to learn on my own eventually, because I didn't learn it then. I learned it later, you know. I was reading some books and, you know, some manuals. Okay, this is what it does. This is where it actually comes from. This is the whole process of menstruation. And so at that time, it was like a fire brigade approach to things, just to tell her, oh, I need money for this now, you know. And how my dad reacted to the whole thing was even stranger, you know. We live in a very small house, or we live in a very small house, and so I was sharing a room, you know, with my dad and my mom. We had just this small room that we're sharing at first, because before I moved to my own room, and I think part of the reason why I moved to my own room was because some changes were going on. And so I started to feel like, is menstruation now a stigma? You know, is this, you know, that kind of thing. But that was my own interpretation of what was going on. Because I didn't really know what was going on. We didn't have that conversation. You know, so I feel like sometimes, you know, the kind of relationship you have with your children will help them.
Your dad handle it? He was just shocked.
He was just like,
don't talk to me about it.
You know, and he was literally man of few words about the topic. He didn't really say much about it. It was like, you know, and the next thing I saw, I was moving to a new room, and you know, and that was it.
So actions spoke louder than words.
And then, you know, I had to rely on my dad for pocket money, and anytime I was writing my list of the things that I needed, you know, to go back to school, because I was in a boarding school, so of course I had to carry sanitary products. And, you know, sometimes I think about what it would have been like if I was in the day school, if that would have been different, you know, if you know, how would that have looked if I wasn't in the boarding school and I didn't have to carry sanitary products every month? How would that have looked, you know, with my mom and my dad? How would they have, you know, because then when I was going back to school, we just had, you know, a pair of sanitary products. Oh, write your list, and I was always scared to write. sanitary
Okay,
towels.
I'll hold you. I'll hold you. On
So yeah, so it was a weird,
time. Okay,
yeah.
that's interesting menstrual experience.
Yeah.
We're going on a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue the conversation, and then we'll be talking about the other stages. Talking about sexual education, men, and the pressures. So prepare yourself. Yeah, we'll be coming back. So we'll be right back, viewers.
In terms of true worship, we must seek the Lord. We will not be able to come with all our perfections.
We will recognize as superseding every other gift. So love, in essence, is very important. Our position is who we are. Our disposition is the way we relate to who we are. So it's not about your position, it's also about your disposition.
People of God, I want to tell you that no matter who you are, no matter your position, your status,
you have encountered that superior power, the efficacious power of the blessing.
It says this God hears prayers, and then he expands the limits of whose prayer is heard.
Welcome back, viewers. Before we went on the break, we were still discussing from girl to womanhood, and my guest is still Mercy John Oyilo and Damilola Ilupejo, and I've been having a lovely time, and I believe you are too. Thank you so much, ladies. I think I'm having fun. Yeah. So we're talking about her first experience when she saw her period. What was your period? I mean, you had a male figure, a father figure who told you about it. But how did your mom react to your first menses? Yeah. I wanted to use the sweeter word, but maybe I don't know this is right now.
There's no sweeter word.
There's no sweeter word.
Word.
So my mom she wasn't surprised.
Okay.
But she was shocked because mine came like a health challenge.
Oh, and
You're
you
seeing
had started your period for a while.
I started my period. I was in class that fateful day. I think it was time for break or so. This was, I think, JS 2 or JS 3. So I remember, I think I was in JS 2C. So pain throughout the previous day, pains. I was like, I can't take this again. And nothing was coming out. I was okay. My mind didn't even go there.
Oh.
I was fine. Then I said, let me go and use the general toilet now, like school toilet. And I went. Before I even left, someone told me, Mercy, see your socks has red stain on it.
Oh.
I was like, red stain? And I had to adjust myself a bit. Then the whole of my skirt was
all
soaked.
messed. Oh dear.
Well, someone did something so nice, gave me her school cardigan. I tied, I went to the general toilet. I said, let me check myself. It was bad.
So who taught you how to wear sanitary towel and all that? Was it from the school?
No, my mom.
Okay, your mom eventually.
My mom taught me.
Okay.
It was a smooth conversation we had.
Okay.
She always makes sure whenever she had the opportunity to get to talk to me, she did it well.
Okay.
She did it, and she always tell me so that if something happens, you will not say I did not tell you. You will not say I didn't warn you.
Yeah.
And all this kind, because I
So
feel
mommy
like
knows.
no.
Oh, okay.
I felt like she was trying to protect something. I felt like she was trying to protect something. At some point, I will hear them say, "This woman, you are overprotective. You are overprotective." But she will challenge that notion and say, "Don't say that to me. If I don't, she always tries to fight such and say, please don't say that to me, and don't give her that impression that I'm being overprotective. I have to be and all that." Anyway, she came to school. They took me home. I was on admission, and she came back to me, "When did it start?" I said, "It just started." You don't know the day it started. You know the kind of thing that somebody wants to. You're trying to get information from somebody. You're trying to beat the person, slap the person, and you're angry because she felt no one menstruates like this.
Oh, right.
Why is your own different?
Because
And
most
that
of our
was-
mothers at that time had a mindset, and they expected it should be like this. Even with the age, they said, "No, I don't think by now you should have started."
Well, the funny thing was, I didn't menstruate 2 days, 3 days, 1 week.
Oh, wow.
I was losing blood.
All right.
I was sick. My mom was like, please, oh.
She thought you had done something.
Option B, prayer house. But she tried.
Yeah.
Because at each point, when I'm awake and when I turn, this woman is on her knees praying. When they finally said they were going to start giving me contraceptives and all that stuff that were going to, because they did a whole lot of tests, they said it was hormonal imbalance, all those things. You know, years ago, all those big names you hear. To my mom, it was one big
Problem.
stuff and all that. But each time I go for tests and all that, the nurse will always tell me, there are people that have this. Different ladies, different girls with their own experience. How you package yourself is what's important.
So when who thought this to both of you? Who taught you how to count your circle? How to know when you're ovulating? Did anybody tell you this is when you're ovulating?
She didn't teach me.
This is,
She didn't. I started asking questions because you know sometimes that you'll be so stressed you won't see your period. You'll be asking yourself, "What's the problem?
Yeah.
What's happening to me? What's it?"
So nobody told you anytime. They didn't tell you you'll see it monthly.
They told me
You
I'll see it monthly.
but they didn't tell you what to do if you didn't see it.
Yes.
Okay.
Except if you don't see it, go to the hospital
Okay.
or ask your nurse or something. But don't. If you know
So you
you've
didn't
not
know
done
how
anything,
to count it. You
I
didn't know how to count your
it.
menstrual cycle.
It was friends that taught me.
They taught you how to count
Yes.
the menstrual
It
cycle.
was friends that taught me how to count.
Did you know how? Did they teach
I
you
think
how
my
to-
own experience was quite different. I think once I started and I told my mom, she wanted to show me, oh, come on, this is how they. I was like, no, I already know how to do it. Thank you.
Oh, so you had already known how to
Yeah,
count.
because you know a lot of friends in my school had already started their
Did you go to an
menses.
all-girls school?
Yeah, an
Oh,
all
right,
girls school. So
okay,
most of my classmates had already
Known how to
seen their
count.
menses. So I already kind of had an idea of what it was like. And a lot of them were expectant, but I wasn't because I just felt it was just a hassle.
Yeah.
So when I finally started, I was like, "Ugh, another month. So I was dreading, you know, the next time it was going to happen. So there was this one time I didn't say for like a while. So I was like, oh, thank God. It's finally over. And then it came back.
We all celebrate when we don't see it because it's
You know,
stressful.
but I think mine fell you know, along the like normal spectrum. So
Okay.
I kind of learned to expect it. I think for me, I didn't actually try to count it because I always felt more like, in a way, I feel like I'm a very sensitive person. So like I tend to feel when something is off, like
Okay.
I'm about to fall ill or something is going on in my body. So like even now, even though I now use a calendar to, you know, count my periods or to count the number of days between periods, because I find that for me, I was expecting mine to be the 28 days every month,
Yeah,
but
you
mine
know, it
wasn't.
varies with
Mine
you.
varies, you know, from 21 to I
Whatever.
think the least I've had so far is like 19 or something.
Okay.
Just-
So now, when it comes to intercourse, you know, you are married, you are not married. So, so how did you have the conversation about sex and all that with the boys? You know, of course, with the boys, because these days you have to be specific. So, what did you? Who did you? How did they come about that discussion? Did your mom call you and say, okay, sit, okay, you told us that your father figure talked to you about that, but did they tell you everything? That were they open enough? Do you think they gave you enough information, or do you think you got more information outside the home than? Okay, let me start with you. Did you think he told you enough, or they told you enough?
It's tricky. Anyone that tells you everything,
Yeah.
it means. So what else? So what will you experience? Because they will just tell you half, and go
how did they
into
tell
the
you?
world.
So how did they tell you? They just said, "Don't let any man touch you. Don't let
Okay.
any man."
If anybody is telling you I love you, it's too early. If anyone starts saying I love you and it's too early, say no. Just say I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Because when you kind of give a response, when you kind of agree, or when you give that attention to that person, the next phase has entered. And the next phase is okay, touching though. And
Yeah.
sometimes touching without consent. Please, it's important that when a girl child is transiting into such stage, please say it as it is. I don't think
You mean mother should say it
Yes.
as it is. Yes.
I don't think for any reason my mom was shy in this area. She told me because she was seeing the signs. Come, please, we are looking for mercy. Who are you?
The
And my
boys.
mom like, where are you meeting all these people? Mommy is church, mommy is lesson. And she's like, lesson, church. Okay, so what are you talking about? And how far have you guys gone? So that she will know where to start the conversation from.
So when your mom asked you this question, did you feel pressured? Did you feel like she was putting you under so much pressure? It's just my friend.
Ma, the pressure was serious.
Oh, wow.
The pressure was pressured. I mean, like how did they say this thing?
The pressure was the pressure.
Because you know mothers now, let's be
Yes.
sincere.
Is it the manner in which she said it?
Yes.
Or if she had called you calmly, man, most mothers were like, this boy,
I'm doing
hey, you want to disgrace me? You want to become
My
a mother?
mom, we know, shout and those. She just keeps asking you. So who is this? She does it during morning devotion. No
dear.
escape routes. Morning devotion was the perfect time. But when it's like bedtime, after that nighttime prayer, only you and her will sit down. And she will start. And sometimes till daybreak. Because she will not, as like she doesn't believe in trying to force you and shout. She just wants to know. And she must get that information from you. Because I feel like the more easy and the more soft-spoken one is, before you know, you will know when you start saying some things. But when a person is just giving you so much pressure and throwing, you will be so hard on the inside. You want to open up. So I told her there was nothing, and she says, okay. Sometimes someone come and report to her that they saw Mercy and a guy holding hands together crossing the road, walking from church and all this. This report, I'm not trying to defend whosoever is coming to report to you, but all I'm trying to say is, doesn't speak well at this stage, at this level.
So did it make you more careful?
Very careful.
Very careful.
Very careful. Very careful. I don't think I was so free with hugs, though.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
You're very mindful.
Yes, I don't think so, because she always used to tell me, don't let your boss as in come in contact with, like, when all these things.
You hug,
yes, because she had to instill these things, and my reactions were from the inside, from somewhere, from something that someone keeps re-echoing into your mind. So
okay, we're rushing
from
down
that.
now because they're really counting me down. So how did you have the conversation? Because you told me it was a bit difficult for your mom to have that conversation.
I don't want
Did
to
your
say,
dad ever talk to you about it? Did your dad talk to you
well,
about
we didn't. I think my dad and I think for me personally, this is just my own perspective. I don't know if that's accurate, but just this is what my own experience was. I felt like my dad just left certain topics to my mom to handle.
Okay.
And I felt like my mom tried to find a way to like discuss it without being overly, because I feel like sometimes children are very different, Some children need as much information as possible to be able to make decisions, and it will not necessarily motivate them to make, some children want to explore every single thing that needs to be explored. So you need to limit certain information, so that they don't go ahead to, so you don't preempt something that you do not want to see. So I think in my own case, it was more about me being like a secretive person. They always told me I was secretive. I don't open up. I didn't say things that were going on in my mind. And so I feel like, in my own case, I feel like my mom was waiting for me to say something so that she could
know where to take you from.
But then, she was waiting too long, because in my mind, I felt like, so there were a lot of things that happened, that I felt were probably avoidable, because I went to an only girls' school, so I had zero information about boys, really. And I told you already how my childhood was. It was like a triangle: school, church, home, school, church, home. And so we didn't really like have a lot of opportunities to mingle. I think we had family friends who had boys, but that was pretty much it. And there were certain events or programs that would have been beneficial that we're not really privy to attending. And so there was not really a lot, and at the time we didn't have that much exposure to like books, the internet,
was
to like check out a lot of information. So what I was limited to was, don't come close to a boy, because you could, now you start your menstruation, you could get pregnant. And I did not exactly understand it at the time. I just knew that I needed to be mindful of boys, really. So when eventually, as you're growing up as a teenager, your hormones starts to change, and then you start to feel something for the opposite sex. You don't know exactly at that point what it is, but most times it starts as infatuation. We begin to notice boys at that time, and for me this was after secondary school. I started to see boys, and I was going to the university, so of course I would have seen more boys. And, I started to meet certain people, and for me, it was like just exploring a new phase. I wasn't going to do anything stupid because I've heard about everything in Sunday school, in church. We always had these discussions. So I think for me, what was very instrumental was the spiritual foundation. Sunday school was very, very essential. Like, we were taught literally every single thing that pertains to us in Sunday school. So my parents didn't have to do much, but I just felt that they could do more, you know. There's sometimes, like, for example, with esteem, because I was someone who struggled with low self-esteem at some point in my life, and I felt that that's why parents come in, because the church can only do so much, you know. But then parents need to reinforce what is positive.
Yeah.
My parents were more of correct. Discipline, correct your child. But you need to balance it, you know. Your children also need feedback. They need someone that is vulnerable with them. Because I've always looked up to I think it was only when I became an adult that I realized my parents were humans, you know. I always saw them as mini gods.
Yeah.
They could do no wrong. So I always put them on a pedestal. So when I started to see them as humans, I was disappointed at first. And then, you know, as I grew up in maturity as an adult, my perspective changed. You know, I started to see them with more sensitivity and more compassion. But, you know, I started to see them with judgment and resentment, because I was like, you're not even perfect, and then you want them to live by, you know, you want them to live to this standard.
Live to that standard.
You know, this was the standard you set for me. You're not even living by those standards, you know, and all those things. But, you know, eventually, and to be honest, I can't emphasize, you know, the purpose or the significance of the spiritual background. Because for me, it was a very huge struggle. I remember my mom telling me many times that I struggle with the spirit of anger. Like, I'm always angry. I'm always, like, there was even one time I came back from school and the report sheet read, aggressive. She needs to be taught on the dangers of hot temper. And then my mom was using that as a note. Like, anything that happens in the house, instead of her to, like, you know, address the issue on ground. She was like, no wonder in school they'll tell you need to be taught dangers of hot temper, you know, and all of that. You know, sometimes we need to address these things with sensitivity.
So let me come to the last question, because there's quite a lot I want to talk about, but maybe we just do this part 2, because I also want to do part 2 with the guys. But so now, like, you're a mom now, you have a son, and I know you have a daughter as well. So how would you raise your daughter differently? You know, how do you think, from the way you were raised, what do you think you would do differently with your daughter? If you, I'm focusing on daughter now, and I know Jason will take care of.
What would I do differently? I won't be too hard. I won't be too hard. The truth is, I will not want to I won't want to train her or teach her with my own experiences. I will give her the opportunity to make mistakes. Yes, I will. What's
the extent of the mistake? Do you think it can be managed if, because this generation coming up,
I'll give her the opportunity to. You see that thing called choice? Because this generation, I keep saying it, we will train them and they'll be well equipped only by the grace and by the mercy of God. What do you want to do? Which hard work do you want to do? It's tough right now already for some parents. So imagine our own. They are exposed to a lot already. As they are coming into this world, the exposure level is, I don't know, it's high.
So because when I'm talking of the mistake, at what point? Because there has to be a point. When you say mistake, maybe you mean allow her to present choices, and then you guide her right. As opposed to allow her the free fall. Okay, I understand.
I saw this book last week, The 5 Love Languages of Children by Gary Chapman. Okay. I told myself I'm going to buy that book. I will get that book. It's needed because I don't know. The first page I opened, I can have one of the pages, but the first part, like my hand flipped in between, was where he talked about choices. And there is a better way to present it to them, so that they will know that the world out there is tough, and you're going to meet tough people. And for you to have a firm decision making, or for you to, as in, You know, some children don't know how to say yes and stick to it. Some children don't know how to say no and stick to it.
Yeah.
They are always, they say,
Bending.
I want to please. I want to, you know, and they end
So
up
you
becoming...
want to help them, when you make a
Yes.
choice, stand by it.
Stand on
no
it.
matter what you
So that-
face.
Yes.
Put your feet
Know the
down
consequences of actions that you take or that you find yourself in, either by carelessness or by your own decisions,
Yeah.
which will lead you there. Because I won't lie, sincerely, I feel like some of the things that happened to me that made me to say, God, I'm going to hold you tight, was some careless mistakes. Some things that would have been avoided.
Yeah.
I feel like present to me choices that will make me reason and
Reason,
say, oh
yeah.
no, I don't need this. So if I do this,
Maybe we were shielded too much.
like Joshua said, choose this day
day
whom you will serve.
yeah.
As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. I will train her in a way that, I don't know, when she's
Okay,
with
we're
other
wrapping up.
ladies or her friends, though, she, don't know, she'll be something to envy.
Envy, yeah.
I don't know how to put it, but
Okay.
it is well.
I think
Holy
I've got.
Spirit
I think
will
I've
help
gotten
us.
the point. So let me wrap up with you now.
Okay.
So how would you rate your daughter?
I think for me, I'll raise my daughter to be confident because I struggled with self-esteem issues. So I feel like raising confident and resilient children starts with the foundation, really.
But when you
You
mean
know, spirit-
confident, there has to be, because sometimes when people are, so I feel when people are overly confident, sometimes they might not know where rude, when they become
Rude or proud.
I think confidence comes from a place of knowing who you are.
All right.
You know, it's not from what other people say about you or how you present or what you think you can brag about. Because I feel like one of the things I really value about my childhood is we're taught not to envy people. Like just how I see my parents, relate. I'm not envious of people. I'm very contented with things I have. I don't look for things that are missing. And even though I struggle with all these issues that I had because I wasn't able to express, it's something I had to learn eventually. Because I think we actually start out that way, and then somewhere along the line we lose it. And when we don't have someone to reaffirm us, because I think one thing I'll do differently is affirm my children, not just correct them. Because children need correction, but they also need to be affirmed. I think my parents kind of overestimated the kind of child I was. I was very independent, so they felt I didn't really need that support. But I needed it.
Yeah.
I just didn't know how to communicate that I needed the support. So I would not assume that my children need that support, don't need that support. I would support them, affirm them, even the ones that are already confident on the surface, affirm them in what they're doing. When they make mistakes, correct them lovingly.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to break a child's spirit in trying to correct. They say don't throw the baby with the bathwater. So if you correct in such a way that now the child's spirit is broken, the correction has no value. So those are the things that I feel intentionally. And then the spiritual background is so important.
Yes.
Because for me, that was something that I held on to throughout my life. Even when I was making mistakes, I was conscious that, my parents emphasized that throughout. A lot of things, memorizing scripture, those are things that I learned watching my parents. Praying and all those spiritual disciplines. These are things that my parents reinforced. And I feel that that's something that will never go out of style.
And as much as possible, this is not to blame parents. They only work with what they knew. They didn't know much. And I pray that we also know much more, learn more, to help our ladies especially come up more confident.
I feel we'll make our own mistakes too. There's no
Yes,
how.
we'll
make our own
kids too have their
mistakes.
own mistakes. But that's the much I can take right now because everybody's buzzing me. We need to end this program now. But we need to do part 2. So we're going to have part 2 to talk.
And I think for the part 2, we should talk about the prayer life of a lady.
The prayer life of a lady.
Hey.
Yeah, that's from the sisters.
Hey.
So yeah.
Hey.
Thank you so much.
Prayer.
Viewers.
Hey.
Thank you so much, viewers. In the past couple of minutes, we've been discussing from girl child to womanhood, and my guests have still been Mercy John Oyilo. Mercy John Oyilo, she's a content writer, and she's also coordinating sisters in one of the fellowships. And then the second guest is David Lola Elupeju. She's a communication specialist. And thank you so much, my viewers, for watching, and I hope you've learned 1 or 2 things today. I'll see you next week. My name is Angela Emeka Ibibo. Goodbye.